911, what's your emergency?
He's not breathing. Oh God, please, it's wrapped around him. It's killing him. Please, send help.
That was the voice of Monica Morell, a 48-year-old woman in Lafayette, Louisiana. She'd just walked into her brother's backyard greenhouse and saw something no one should ever have to see. Her brother Daniel, face purple, body twisted, was pinned beneath a 13-foot albino Burmese python named Ghost. It wasn't a dog. It wasn't a wild animal that broke in. It was his pet, his rescue, his companion of nearly 6 years, and now it was the reason he was dying alone on a concrete floor. Before we go deeper into this heartbreaking and deeply human story, if you're someone who cares about the bond between people and animals, the kind of real-life stories that make you stop and think, please take a moment to subscribe to Animal Story. We bring you raw, emotional, and unforgettable stories about the connection between humans and animals. Some are beautiful, others are tragic. But all of them are true. Your support helps us keep telling the stories others are too afraid to touch. Now, back to what happened that day. To understand why a man like Daniel would share his home with a creature like Ghost, we need to go back to where the story really began. Daniel Morell wasn't crazy. He wasn't one of those reckless types you see on viral videos letting venomous snakes slither across their face. He was a former wildlife rehabber, a gentle soul, the kind of guy who could sit in the woods for hours just listening to birdsong. He lost his wife in a car crash 7 years ago. She was hit head-on by a drunk driver on I-10. It broke him. After the funeral, Daniel all but disappeared from public life. He quit his job at the Wildlife Center, sold the house he and his wife had built, moved to a small property on the edge of Lafayette with an old greenhouse out back, said he needed space, quiet. For a while, that was enough. He gardened, he read, a lot. His older sister Monica visited a couple times a week, bringing groceries and making sure he was still eating. Then came Ghost. Ghost wasn't just a snake. He was a survivor, an albino Burmese python, seized during a wildlife trafficking raid near the Texas border. Malnourished, injured, with a cracked jaw and a body full of parasites. The Wildlife Center planned to euthanize him. Too many animals. Not enough staff. Daniel had stopped by that day to drop off some old supplies. When he saw Ghost in his tank, he didn't look away. There was something in the way the snake moved, even when he was barely clinging to life. He wasn't giving up, Daniel later told Monica. He was hurting, but he was still trying. So Daniel took him home. At first, it was just temporary, just until Ghost got strong enough to be transferred. But the weeks turned into months. Ghost started eating again. His jaw healed, his body filled out. Daniel built a custom enclosure for him inside the greenhouse, and then the videos started. Short clips on Instagram and Facebook. Daniel letting Ghost slither across his shoulders, feeding him by hand, brushing dirt off his scales like he was grooming a horse. Most people were fascinated. A few were horrified. One post went semi-viral. Widowed wildlife expert adopts giant python, calls him family. Daniel didn't care about the fame. He rarely responded to comments. For him, Ghost wasn't a stunt. He was something else, a second chance. Ghost didn't just fill the silence in Daniel's house. He filled the silence in Daniel's soul. That kind of grief, losing the one person you plan to spend your life with, it changes you. It leaves an emptiness that most people never talk about. Ghost became a ritual, a routine, something that moved and breathed and reacted. And unlike people, Ghost didn't ask questions, didn't offer pity. He was just there. To Monica, it was weird, but harmless, until it wasn't. Because Ghost wasn't a dog, and nature always keeps the score. At tea. First, Monica brushed it off. Ghost was huge, sure, but he'd never shown any signs of aggression. Daniel had a calm presence, like he could sit next to a bear and the thing would fall asleep. And besides, he'd worked with animals his whole life. If anyone could handle a 13-foot Burmese python, it was her brother. But then things started to shift. Subtle at first. Ghost stopped eating, not for a day or two, but for weeks. Daniel said it wasn't unusual. Snakes go off food sometimes, change in season, barometric pressure. Who knows? Monica wasn't so sure. She'd catch Ghost, staring, not just watching but tracking. That cold, alien gaze following Daniel's every move from inside the glass enclosure. One afternoon, she walked into the greenhouse to find Daniel sitting on a bench with Ghost draped across his lap. The snake was slowly coiling, tightening a bit around Daniel's forearm. "You're letting him do that?" she asked. Daniel just smiled. "He's just stretching. He likes the warmth." Monica didn't say anything, but the hair stood up on her neck. Something didn't feel right. The next time she visited, one of the front panels of the enclosure was cracked. Deep scratches lined the edge. "Looks like he tried to push through," Monica said. Daniel waved it off. "Old glass. Probably shifted in the heat." That night, Monica called a friend who worked at the local zoo. She asked what it meant when a python stopped eating and started showing signs of agitation. The answer came back fast and grim. Constrictors don't pace like dogs. They don't act out of boredom. When a big snake starts refusing food and tracking movement, it's sizing something up, not out of curiosity, out of instinct. She relayed the message to Daniel. He didn't want to hear it. "Ghost isn't wild. I raised him from near death. He knows me." Monica hesitated. "He's a snake, Danny. He doesn't know you. He remembers you, maybe. But he doesn't love you." Daniel shook his head. "Love isn't always about wagging tails and fetch. It's about trust. Ghost trusts me." Monica knew when not to push. Daniel could be stubborn. Kind, thoughtful, but stubborn. Especially when it came to things he'd poured himself into, and Ghost. Ghost had become his whole world. Still, the signs kept coming. Daniel found Ghost outside his enclosure one morning. He'd slipped through the damaged panel. That should have been a wake-up call. Instead, Daniel took it as a sign of trust. "He could have gone anywhere," he said, "but he stayed in the greenhouse." Monica wasn't so romantic about it. Or maybe he stayed because what he wants is in the greenhouse. Then a neighbor's cat went missing, a little orange tabby named Peaches, always, roaming the yards, friendly as can be. One day she vanished. No prints, no fur, just gone. Monica asked Daniel if he'd seen her. He hesitated. "I saw something moving in the hedges the other night. Could have been Ghost, but he doesn't go after pets." "You sure about that?" Daniel didn't answer. That same week, Monica found a printout left on the kitchen table. It was an article titled, "When? Python Strike, the subtle warning signs before the attack." It listed behaviors: refusing food, tracking human movement, pacing, coiling near sleeping areas. Monica looked up at her brother, who was sipping coffee by the window. "You read this?" He nodded. "You believe it?" A long pause. "I believe that most people don't understand what it means to truly trust something dangerous. Ghost is different." Monica stared at him. "No, he's not. That snake doesn't care that you saved his life. He only cares that you're warm and soft." Daniel laughed gently. "You always were the dramatic one." But deep down, Monica wasn't being dramatic. She was being scared, because she knew her brother, and she knew that love, when it's tangled up with grief, can make even the smartest people blind. Saturday, June 2nd, started off like any other humid Louisiana afternoon. Thick air, slow sunshine, and the kind of silence that settles in right before something goes terribly wrong. Daniel was in a good mood that morning. He made coffee, flipped, pancakes, even sent Monica a funny meme about introverts and houseplants. She laughed when she read it. For a second, everything felt normal. She texted back, "You good today?" Daniel responded with a photo. It was Ghost, curled up in the corner of the greenhouse, barely visible through the morning mist on the glass. "Just need a little time to reconnect," he wrote. Monica frowned at the message. She'd been planning to drop off groceries that afternoon, but something about his tone made her nervous. So she called. "Hey, you sure it's a good idea to go in there alone today? Maybe wait until I get there?" Daniel chuckled softly on the line. "I've cleaned that enclosure 100 times, Mon. He's been calm all morning. Just laying there. He missed me, that's all." Monica hesitated. "Dan, just promise me the door stays open. I don't like this feeling. I'll be fine," he said. "Go enjoy your Saturday." She didn't push. Maybe she should have. Around noon, Daniel pulled on his old boots, grabbed a clean towel, a bucket of water, and stepped barefoot into the greenhouse, like he always did. He said it helped him stay grounded, to feel the dirt under his feet. Said it reminded him of the old days at the Wildlife Center, before everything fell apart. Ghost was in the back, half coiled, unmoving, a pale gold shimmer under the heat lamps. "Hey there, big guy," Daniel said quietly. He crouched down, started, cleaning out the old bedding, adjusting the new heating mat he'd ordered last week. Wiped down the glass, rinsed the water bowl, talked to Ghost in that soft, calm voice he always used. He didn't see the shift, didn't notice how Ghost had started watching again, tongue flicking slower, eyes locked in. He turned his back to grab the new bedding. That's when it happened. Pythons don't growl. They don't give warning barks or loud roars. They move like ghosts, fast, silent, and with purpose. In an instant, Ghost lunged, jaws wide, clamping down on Daniel's upper thigh. Daniel gasped, stumbled backward. Before he could scream again, the coils came, tight, violent, relentless. Once, twice. 3 full loops around his chest, arms, and midsection. He clawed at the ground, kicked, tried to pry the snake off, but the pressure was already crushing his ribs. Somewhere, deep in his chest, something snapped. At 1:04 p.m., Monica pulled into the driveway. She hadn't been able to shake the feeling. She canceled her plans and decided to stop by anyway, just to check. When she got to the back of the house, the back door was wide open. The greenhouse windows were fogged, but something in the air didn't feel right. She stepped closer, and then she saw it. Daniel, twisted on the concrete floor, face turning purple, limbs limp. Ghost was wrapped around him, unmoving, like a statue carved in ivory. For a split second, Monica froze. Then everything hit at once. She ran to the door, locked. Screamed his name, pounded on the glass. Nothing. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? My brother. He's not breathing. Our snake, it's wrapped around him. He's turning blue. Oh, God, please hurry. Dispatch told her to stay on the line. Help was on the way. She dropped the phone and grabbed the first thing she could, a metal rake, and started smashing the side window. Glass cracked, but the opening was too small. She couldn't get in. She screamed. Neighbors heard. People came, running. Someone pulled out a phone and started filming. And inside, Daniel's body lay still. When first responders arrived at 1:19 p.m., Monica pointed them to the greenhouse. Her hands were covered in blood, half from broken glass, half from trying to pull Daniel's arm through the window. 2 officers stepped in, one with a baton, one with a shotgun. They saw the scene and didn't hesitate. One shot rang out, a clean, point-blank blast to Ghost's head. The snake's body convulsed, the coils loosened, but it was already too late. Daniel was gone. The news broke before the coroner had even signed the paperwork. Louisiana man killed by pet python, 3-foot snake strangles owner to death. Sister called 911. Exotic pet turned deadly in quiet suburb. It was everywhere, on TV, on Twitter, on Reddit, threads filled with snake owners and armchair experts. Before Monica even got home from the hospital, footage from the neighbor's live stream had hit over 200,000 views. She hadn't even told their mother yet. Monica sat alone on Daniel's porch that night, wrapped in a blanket, the smell of blood, and greenhouse mulch still clinging to her clothes. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it all over again. Daniel's face, Ghost's coils, the impossible stillness. Reporters had already started calling. So had strangers. One message read, "What did he expect? It's a python, not a puppy." Another said, "He died trying to make a wild animal into a pet. That's not tragic. That's Darwin." The cruelty stunned her, not because it was unexpected, but because it came so fast. But it wasn't all bad. Some people understood. Comments poured in from folks who followed Daniel's videos, wildlife educators, grief counselors, even snake owners, people who saw something familiar in Daniel, a man trying to rebuild a life out of the pieces that grief left behind. He loved that animal. You could see it in everything he did. This wasn't just a pet to him. It was his way of coping. We should be talking about how pain makes people reach for whatever connection they can find. But still, the judgment was louder. Monica deleted her Facebook account 2 days later. The funeral came 5 days after the attack. They buried Daniel in a small cemetery just outside of Lafayette, next to his wife. Monica wore black. She carried a folded letter Daniel had written 3 years earlier, in case something weird ever happens. He never mentioned Ghost. A few dozen people came, old co-workers from the wildlife center, a couple of neighbors. One woman who drove in from Mississippi after seeing Daniel's Instagram videos. No one spoke much. The air felt heavy. Monica stood up at the service. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "My brother was the kindest, most stubborn man I've ever known. He loved things that other people gave up on. Animals, people, even himself sometimes on the hard days. He believed love could fix anything." She paused. "But love doesn't always rewrite nature." And then she sat back down. After the funeral, the media frenzy died down, but the debate didn't. Podcasts ran segments. Panels on cable news brought in experts. PETA issued a statement. Animal control offices around the country started getting flooded with calls. "Is my snake dangerous? Can a boa constrictor do the same thing? What should I do if I already own one?" Monica watched it all unfold with a sick feeling in her gut. Her brother wasn't a talking point. He wasn't a warning sign. He was her family. But if telling his story meant preventing this from happening again, maybe that's what he would have wanted. A week later, a Louisiana state representative reached out. She wanted to propose a new law. Daniel's Law, a bill that would ban private ownership of large constrictor snakes in residential areas. At first, Monica wasn't sure. She didn't want Daniel remembered for how he died. She wanted people to remember how he lived, how he built things, taught kids about rescue animals, how he could spend an hour talking to a hawk like it was an old friend. But she also remembered that last moment in the greenhouse, the silence, the way Ghost had looked at her, not like a grieving pet, but like a creature with no understanding of what had just happened, no memory, no guilt, just instinct. So she said yes. Daniel's Law passed faster than anyone expected. Less than 3 months after his death, the Louisiana State Senate voted unanimously to prohibit the private ownership of large constrictor snakes, like Burmese pythons, reticulated pythons, and anacondas, in residential areas. There were no protests, no long-drawn public hearings. The footage was enough. Lawmakers watched as Monica sat quietly in a hearing room, her hands folded around a single photo of her brother. Daniel smiling in the greenhouse, a young ghost coiled gently around his shoulders. She didn't speak during the vote. She didn't need to. The grief in her eyes said everything. Daniel's law didn't stop at Louisiana. Animal advocacy groups picked up the momentum. Wildlife experts used Daniel's story as a case study in conferences and classrooms. His death became a talking point on morning shows, a cautionary tale for thousands of exotic pet owners across the country. Some people pushed back, of course. I've had my boa for 10 years without an issue. This is fear-mongering. One tragedy doesn't mean we all lose our rights. But the tide had turned. Daniel wasn't a thrill-seeker or a backyard collector. He was a trained wildlife rehabber. He knew what he was doing, and it still wasn't enough. If he could misjudge a predator, so could anyone. Monica didn't stop with the law. She took the money from Daniel's life insurance and founded the Daniel Morrell Wildlife Foundation, nonprofit dedicated to educating the public about exotic animals, wildlife boundaries, and responsible care. Its mission was simple: love animals, respect nature, know the line. The foundation partnered with schools across Louisiana. They launched workshops for kids and families, created training modules for first responders, and even held town hall events on what to do if you spot an exotic pet in your neighborhood. One of their first campaigns featured a billboard just off I-10. It showed a silhouette of a snake curled around a pair of boots with the words, "It's not about fear, it's about respect." Monica cried the first time she drove past it. By the end of the year, the foundation had raised over $150,000 in donations. Some came from people who'd followed Daniel online, others from total strangers who had simply seen the headline and felt something shift inside them. One woman mailed in a check with a handwritten note. "I almost got my son a baby python last Christmas. After reading what happened to your brother, I got him a bearded dragon instead. Thank you for telling the truth, even when it hurts." It wasn't just about snakes anymore. It was about boundaries, about grief, about understanding that love, while powerful, can't rewrite instinct. Monica still lived in the same town. She moved into a smaller house, quiet, tucked away. She kept Daniel's favorite flannel jacket, his old books, and the photo he'd taken of Ghost the day he brought him home. Sometimes, late at night, she'd open his laptop and rewatch the old videos. In one of them, Daniel stands in the greenhouse with Ghost on his shoulders, the sun's pouring through the glass. He's smiling, calm, grounded, alive. He looks into the camera and says, "People always ask if I'm afraid, but I think love is stronger than fear. Always has been." Monica lets the video play all the way through, and then she closes the screen. Because now she knows. Love is strong, but it's not enough to change what something is. And some things, no matter how much you want to believe otherwise, were never meant to be tamed. 6 months after Daniel Morrell's death, the world had moved on. But Monica hadn't. Not entirely. The news crews were gone. The internet had latched onto its next tragedy, and the people who once filled her inbox with opinions, some kind, some cruel, had gone quiet. But Monica still woke up thinking about that greenhouse. She still drove past the empty lot where Daniel's house used to stand, bulldozed by the county after the property was deemed a hazard. All that remained was a cracked foundation and the faint outline of where the greenhouse once stood. The dirt had already started swallowing it back. Nature doesn't wait. It moves on. But grief lingers. Monica found healing in small things. She went back to teaching part-time at the local middle school, science classes mostly. She told stories about ecosystems, predator behavior, and animal instinct. She never mentioned Daniel's name. But sometimes when the classroom got quiet and a student asked about snakes or wild animals, she'd take a breath and say, "Respect matters more than love when it comes to nature." That was her way of keeping him close, not through pity, but through purpose. The Daniel Morrell Wildlife Foundation continued to grow. It partnered with wildlife centers in Texas, Mississippi, and Georgia, launched a podcast, created an online database for people who wanted to learn more about the legal and emotional responsibilities of owning exotic animals. It wasn't flashy. It didn't go viral, but it mattered. One night, Monica got an email from a 17-year-old in Arizona who had been keeping a large boa in his bedroom. He wrote, "I didn't realize how dangerous it was until I watched your brother's story. I rehomed her to a sanctuary today. Thank you." That was all Monica needed to keep going. Not a crowd, not applause, just knowing someone listened. People still asked questions. Some were simple, curious. Others were harder. Would Daniel still be alive if he'd let go sooner? Was it love that killed him or denial? Monica didn't always know how to answer. Because the truth is complicated. Daniel wasn't reckless. He didn't bring home a predator to impress anyone or chase likes on social media. He wasn't trying to be famous. He was lonely. He was grieving. And he found comfort in something silent, something strong, something he thought he could understand. But in the end, Ghost was still a snake. And no matter how many quiet nights they shared, no matter how deep Daniel's love ran, instinct doesn't care about memory. It only knows hunger and heat, and the moment when movement becomes opportunity. If Daniel's story teaches us anything, it's this. We need to be honest about the animals we invite into our lives. Love isn't a leash. Care isn't a cage. And sometimes trying to fill the empty parts of ourselves with wild things only leaves us more broken than before. So now, we want to ask you, have you ever known someone who kept an exotic animal? Did they see the red flags and ignore them? Where do we draw the line between connection and control? Should people be allowed to keep wild predators in private homes? If they raise them with love? Or are some creatures simply not meant to live in our backyards? Tell us what you think in the comments, because asking hard questions and having honest conversations is how we stop tragedies like this from happening again. If Daniel's story moved you, please subscribe to Animal Story. We bring you real, raw, unforgettable stories that honor the beauty and danger of the human-animal bond. Some stories heal. Some stories haunt. This one does both. In memory of Daniel Morell, a man who believed in second chances, a man who loved deeply, a man who never saw it coming. He thought he'd tamed the wild, but the wild was never his to hold.